So today during the lockdown, we're joined by Carol Decker. Hi, Carol.
Hi Lewis, how you doing?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad, kind of, weird, like everybody at the moment, but we're very lucky. We live in the country in Oxfordshire, so we've got a bit of space and we're able to go out and walk the dog and sort of do, normal things, get some fresh air and stretch our legs and stuff. So I can't complain. I'm sure lots of people are having it a lot worse, but, can't wait for things to get back to normal, really.
Well, we were just kind of talking before we did the interview, and you're actually saying surprisingly, you're actually quite busy because a lot of people at the minute are just kind of pottering around their houses, doing the jobs that have been meaning to be done for a while. But you're actually keeping quite busy. So tell us some of the stuff that you've been doing.
Well, I am pottering about the house and cleaning stuff, and I never realised how filthy my house was till I had a chance to look at it closely. It's quite embarrassing. But anyway, Ronnie and I, for those of you who are Tapao fans, Ron Rogers is the other sort of founder member of Tapao and the guy I've written most of my songs with all my career. We just before lockdown, we'd gotten a couple of tracks in the can. I'd gone up to Wales to his studio, and then thanks to the wizardry of technology, he came here to Henley, and we did the vocals in my own bedroom. And we got all that sort of sorted, and he said, well, come on, let's just pop a track out, let's just stick it as a download. So we've got this fantastic new song called Be Wonderful, which I think will go live May the 8th. So we'll let everybody know where they can get it. And he said, right, you've got to do a video, you've got to do a lockdown video. And so both my kids, Scarlett and Dylan, Dylan's still doing creative media production as a sixth form course, and Scarlett did it, and she's now doing animation production at uni till they sent her home. And we've got the cameras, so I said, right, come on, we need to do a video for the song. So we've spent a few days filming just what we went for, sort of a comedy sort of thing. So we're just filming lots of props around the house, and we've got ducks and chickens and all sorts of nutty things that we could factor into the story, and our dog Finn, who's bonkers. And then we were editing it, and then of course we had to send it off to Ronnie, and Ronnie would have his comments, and we'd have to change a few shots and all the rest of it. And then Ronnie did the mastered the single online using sort of plug-in tools, which is fantastic. And then we've been working on the artwork, so we had to find an image that just said "Be Wonderful" to us. So we've got a fantastic picture of Scarlett at her 21st birthday last year. And so, yeah, we've just been a little very industrious, but I have to give the credit to Ronnie, because I would just sit around crying and drinking wine, left to my own devices. Ronnie is very productive, and he's like, come on, let's do it. So, yeah, he's a proactive person and I'm a reactive person. But anyway, he's galvanized us, which is great.
Well, do you know, the last time, talking about a glass of wine, the last time we actually had an interview was in Plymouth at the show with Nick Kershaw and Go West, and your arm was
Yes.
actually in a sling at the time, and you soldiered on. You had a glass of wine in the other hand, your arm in a sling.
Yeah. I'm ambidextrous when it comes to holding a glass of wine. I know. I can't believe where the time's gone. That was 2018. I broke my shoulder in November, and I've forgotten it's happened. I had a marvelous repair thanks to the fabulous NHS. I was taken to St Thomas's by paramedics in London, and then did all my recuperation at the Royal Berks in Reading. And you wouldn't know. I can now lift wine with my right hand again, which is great.
I've got to say, obviously, Tapao during the 80s, one of the biggest and most successful bands here in the UK and all over the world. But what I wanted to actually speak to you about, getting a number one single in the 80s was completely different to getting a number one now, because obviously we've got streaming services, you've got Spotify's, your iTunes and things like that. But back then, you actually had to physically go out and buy the single, which was a much bigger experience than you get now. So how would you say that's for people who are in the music industry now and starting out? Do you think that they don't get to experience what you got to experience? Because in a way, not saying it was more successful, but to get a number one was a lot difficult.
Well, yeah. You know what? I wouldn't really. I'm very conscious of sounding like an old fart, because I would just say the experience is different. But yeah, it was very, for want of a better expression, everything was very analog, very organic. So to get yourself known, you had to gig everywhere, jump in a clapped out van and schlap around the country and hope you caught someone's attention. Whereas now, obviously, you can do your YouTube channel and do it on all different platforms and SoundCloud and whatever ways young kids do it now. But you had to sell records, and I remember China in Your Hand had sold 500,000 copies on its own as a single. And if somebody had that as album sales now, they'd be beside themselves. So I know it's all changed. And I'm going to say I don't entirely understand it. I'll be completely honest with you. The whole sort of streaming and what I know about streaming is since Napster, royalties are decimated. And, I don't want people to get out the tiniest violin in the world and feel sorry for me, but we're not all in that top 2% like the Rolling Stones or Madonna or Beyonce. Those of us who had a handful of hits 30 years ago, our royalties are our pension. They've been our income, and they should have been our pension, and they're not there anymore at all.
I was going to say, as we're talking about China in Your Hand, in our last, did you write the song or co-write the song?
Yeah, I co-wrote 90% of all To Power songs. If you check the credits, it's me and Ron Rogers. And then I've also co-written with some other really talented people. And then The Promise, which was the third album by the original lineup, was more of a collaboration with the other band members. But it's mainly me and Ronnie. And, we sort of do work with other people, but we just click. We fight a lot, but we click as well. So, and I think we come up with some great stuff. And I can't wait for you all to hear Be Wonderful. It is a wonderful song. We're super happy with it. And we put out a great single last summer called Run.
We played that on the show. It was absolutely fantastic.
It is, isn't it? And it is hard to get the attention that we used to get. And it kind of makes me grind my teeth a bit, because that's a great song. But you've just got to put stuff out and keep going and let people know it's there the best you can.
And the great thing, I know you do a lot of the 80s festivals, and that's a great opportunity to get your music out there. But what I did want to ask you is, the 80s seems to be a completely different category. You've got the 60s shows, the 70s shows, but they're nowhere near as big as the 80s reunions in regards to the capacity of the people that turn up, the sellout tickets. So why do you think the 80s have, as a music era, became so legendary and nothing's ever lived up to it since?
Well, I've got a theory that it's not just the music, it's the decade. So if you think about all the leaps in technology in the 80s, computers, the mobile phone, even things like MTV arriving, there were massive sort of leaps in pop culture and modern life, I think. And you remember sort of the yuppie and greed is good and all. And there was, although there were lots of people having a very tough time in the 80s, there was also a pervading sort of atmosphere as build it and they will come, So for me, I remember it as a very optimistic, forward-thinking decade where if you set your mind to something, anything was possible. And I think the music sort of sits on that message. So I know lots of young people are discovering 80s music because they love all the synths and the retro sounds. But I think for other people of a certain age, like post 40, say 45, I think they remember the vibe as well. And it's almost like reliving that, So, but I can't remember another decade where the artists were as diverse. I might get shot down in flames, because I was very immersed in the 80s, so I haven't really paid much attention to the 60s and 70s. But you'd get somebody as probably kids today won't realize how Boy George made people stop and catch their breath. They didn't know if he was a girl or a boy. And then the whole gay, he was gay. And then you get great big rock bands like Bon Jovi and U2, or Madonna, Michael Jackson, Talking Heads, all the electro pop bands, the New Romantics. You know, it's so diverse. Depeche Mode, you know, just I couldn't pick a favorite artist because there's so many brilliant ones, and they're also different from each other. So it was just special. I don't know. It was like Planet Earth. What do they call us? A Cinderella planet, just in the right place. I think the 80s just had everything.
And I mean, for you, it was such a busy time. I mean, I guess for you, you didn't really get to absorb a lot of it because you were always on TV shows, radio stations, touring, performing. So
Yeah.
is that a struggle at times? Because we always have, you know, you do interviews like this where we chat about the success of Tapao and the great experiences you had. But at the time, I guess you didn't necessarily get to experience or take it in as such because of how busy you actually were.
Well, I loved it. You know, personally, I
Yeah.
loved it. It's everything I ever wanted, was to be that in demand and busy and successful. I completely loved it. I didn't really get to see any of the places I was in. You know, so you'd be traveling internationally and you'd go from airport to hotel to TV studio to venue, couple of drinks maybe in a club somewhere or a bar, and then you'd be amazed how many 5 a.m. flights you're on. People think it's an easy life being an international superstar. It's not. You have to get up early a lot and with a raving hangover. It's really, really hard. It's a hard life. So I didn't absorb where I was, but I did take in who I'd become, and it was fantastic. You know.
And obviously, we got the new single that you were just talking about coming out there. But obviously, before this lockdown, were there any projects that you were working on that's kind of been halted whilst this is going on?
Only in as much as every single gig that I
Yeah.
had in the book from March through now to the end of December, every single one has gone back to next year. So all my work's been wiped out completely for the year. But I have to be grateful that it's all been postponed. Well, hopefully they're all on TBCs in my diary. So hopefully the promoters will go through with the postponed schedule. Because it's how I earn my living, you know, being out on the
Yeah.
road. But mainly in terms of projects, because as I say, Ronnie and I managed to get 3 singles recorded just before lockdown. We're probably going to be able to put out some music because you can master it online. It's all
Yeah.
in the can. We just got to. I don't think the chickens can star in another video. I think we'll have seen too much of them. I have to think of something else for the next one.
It sounds like a scene out of the Darling Buds of May from what you've recorded.
It
Chickens
is.
going around.
And our duck Joey. Yeah,
Oh. No,
definitely.
honestly, every time I get to speak to you, it's been fantastic because my parents were huge fans, and growing up, I was always around Tapal's music. And I remember when I first got the interview with you, it was the first time really my parents kind of were surprised because you were the first person I interviewed that they actually really liked. Um,
Nice bit of synchronicity. Yeah.
so yeah, and they've seen you many times. They've seen you in Falmouth, that they've been to shows in Plymouth where you've been at. So it's always great, and you've got
Brilliant.
such a recognisable voice, which is when you listen to a lot of music, you can't pinpoint a voice as such at times, but you've got this incredible, powerful voice as well, which is just, and you could tell that in Run when you released a song um, last year. You got that again. It was so nice to hear. So I'm looking forward to the upcoming
Well,
tracks.
that's really kind of you to say so. I do. That's really, really kind. I appreciate it because I do think, you know, as a singer, you compare yourself to. I listen to someone like Beverly Knight and Beyonce and just think, oh, I'm just going to pack it in. There, you know, I can't sing like that. But it's all about individuality, isn't it? More than vocal gymnastics sometimes. I mean, the vocal gymnasts are amazing singers, but I think it's having a voice that is, as you say, idiosyncratic and identifiable. That I have to remember that when I'm comparing myself harshly to somebody who can get a top C and I can't.
No, honestly, your voice is incredible, and songs like, and it's good because I've always found, for me personally, you sometimes listen to someone who was a big star in the 70s and 80s. You listen to them now, and it's kind of like, you know, they're not as it used to be. Whereas your single last year really lived up to China in Your Hand, strong vocals, and it was so nice to hear because you've got exactly now what you had, you know, in the 80s. So yeah, it's fantastic to
Well,
hear.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, I probably would say what I have discovered in the studio. I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. I now have, which I never had before. I now have asthma. It's not chronic, but it's reasonably annoying. So if I'm doing a live show, I find it difficult to be very active on stage and catch my breath. Do
Of
you know what I
course.
mean? So I have to have a, take tablets and have a go on my inhaler so that I can, and now I have to make a decision, dance or sing. So
See,
that's really frustrating. And I didn't know what was happening. It was a couple of years ago. I thought it was hay fever. I thought it was allergies. And then I had to do, I'm sure people out there will know what I'm talking about, peak flow tests on my breathing. And it was really low. And they said, you have asthma. And I said, I've never had asthma. And they said, well, you have now. So that's annoying live. So, but I try not to let it compromise my singing. I just have to be a bit careful about, you know, how I behave on stage so I can conserve energy, conserve the note. But in the studio, it's fine because you can just stop, have a nice gulp of tea and a whiz on your puffer and sing again. So yeah, thanks for the compliment. I'm glad it sounded all right.
no, absolutely, and thank you. I was going to say, your only other alternative is to stand still on stage, sing, and have a nice glass of wine in the other hand as well. I think
I'll
we would-
find a way around it. Don't worry, Lewis. Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking to us again. We'd love to get your new songs on the show as well. So when they're released, we'll get them played for you.
Will do. Will do.
That's brilliant. Thank